depending on where you are in the world, in the country. We have about half of our views, as you may remember, across the world. A lot of interest in Asia. The interest, by the way, there is growing. So we're looking at moving our hours to make it a little bit earlier to get a lot of folks over in Asia at late night. We're going to not move it too much, though, because we got folks from the West Coast in the U.S. who are interested. Today, speaking of West Coast and folks that are interested, today we've got the super senior, Daniel Trevor. We'll talk a little bit more about Daniel and what he's done. But here's the thing. As you'll see, I mean, he's in the skincare industry, owns businesses in that space. So he's been in the acting industry as well. So he's had to really take care of his outside, his skin, his muscles. But, as he got involved with working with us, he began to say, you know what, dang, I wish I'd known how to take care of those arteries and my insides a little bit better. And so Daniel has been like not only a super senior, but a super student. He's written a great book on his experiences and the science behind what goes on with protecting those arteries as we age. So we will get there in just a minute in terms of getting started with our deck. But before we bring Daniel on board, let's talk a little bit about what else you can find on our channel. Recent previous topics, we had Dr. Avadia. Phil Avadia is an Ivy League trained cardiothoracic surgeon. He basically did stents for his, the vast majority of his job. He's still doing a few stints, but not so much anymore. He's actually done a significant part of job change where he's now doing something similar to what I do. He's got a telemedicine program for helping people get out of heart attack and stroke risk. The book that he wrote is titled Stay Off of My Operating Table. And he's been on a couple of other shows like Ken Berry's and talked mostly about science. But on our show, he talked a little bit more about his own personal experience with weight loss, obesity, and managing that issue, which, again, you would think an Ivy League cardiothoracic surgeon might know a little bit about. Maybe not. So he had to learn a lot of this the hard way, too, just like the rest of us. We also recently had... pardon the typo, that's not William, it's Will Gilliam. Will has been a career hospital administrator, and he shared some of the things he learned also the hard way. We've talked recently about a new anti-aging drug, and we've had a lot of discussions about the CVOT trials, cardiovascular outcome trials. You don't really... Here's what a cardiovascular outcome trial is. It's basically looking at the number one cause of disability and death and looking at the core causes. And instead of just doing, and for those of you who have been on the channel before know that we're talking about diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, that stuff, all the same disease. And it comes with three major risk factors. One is genetics, which you can't do a whole lot about, but two others. Aging is the second very important one. So out of those 2 out of 3, you can't do much about your genetics. You can't do much about your age, but you can certainly do something about the third one, and that is body fat. Body fat drives this problem. And again, we talk a lot about that specific topic and how to have a long, healthy life. So we'll talk a little bit more about some more developments in the GLP-1 drug space, the GLP-1s and the SGLT2s, two different drug classes. if the technical labels turn you off, it's just a couple of drug classes that are making huge impact on cardiovascular outcomes for diabetes. So again, I think I went down a bunny hole and didn't come back up. So let me just clarify. The cardiovascular outcome trials are what we do for diabetes drugs now. And the CVOTs, cardiovascular outcome trials, are showing that the GLP-1s like Ozempic and Wegovy and Rybelsus, all the same drug, semaglutide, are coming out with huge decreases in cardiovascular outcomes, heart attack, stroke, heart failure, that sort of thing. So, yeah, you're saying, Doc, are you turning into a weight loss guru? I've been focused on weight loss forever because body fat is the major driver of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and the heart attack, stroke, dementia, and kidney disease and blindness that goes along with it. So, so I've already gotten a little bit technical. Wait a minute, Doc, is there a way that you can slow down? Yes, there is. We've got 4 basic curriculum courses that we make available. Most of them are for free, and we'll continue to offer them for free. And within just a couple of hours, you can know more than 90% of primary care docs. Did I say that right? Am I just bragging? Is that inappropriate? No. If you spend time on this channel, you know very clearly. Folks from my old employer, Hopkins, and now Mayo and Harvard, all of the academic medical centers are acknowledging it. They're doing research and they're saying, well, here's one of the reasons why we have this problem in this country. The leadership, the primary care doctors, 3/4 of them don't know how to diagnose this problem, prediabetes, let alone manage it. So unfortunately, if the docs, the professionals that we rely on to help us in this space, don't know how to diagnose it, let alone manage it, unfortunately, as a patient, you got to figure out some ways to learn some of this on your own. And that's exactly what these courses are about. Within about 2 hours, yes, you'll know more about insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, than the vast majority of doctors that are supposed to be taking care of this. So the channel continues to grow. We're about 120,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. Now, Locals, Rumble, some of the other social media are picking us up. We've Gilbert and Aspen and Sam and the crowd have put a lot of effort into developing the content on those channels. So if you're more of a Locals guy or a Rumble lady, go check us out. We also, by the way, have memberships. We joined a membership program for YouTube specifically. So take a look at that. Again, one of the things that it does is it has a small subscription. Any little thing that you do can help us get this message out across the world. We've got some information here on our monthly subscription plans. Up until now, it's been very expensive to see us. We couldn't manage, couldn't accept insurance. But a big change is happening with us. Within a month or two, I expect us to be accepting Medicare. And then after a few months of experience in accepting Medicare, we should be able to start accepting some other programs as well. That will be a big, big deal for a lot of people. We've already done some surveys, and between 200 and 600 people are saying, well, it's 200 people just from one survey result. They're saying, yes, I'd be very interested. And on average, each of those 200 people is saying, I've got between 1 and 3 family members and friends that I know would want to do this. So a lot of interest in this space. Now, can I see all of those patients all at once as one individual? No, obviously we'll have to grow. But I'll tell you, I've been very involved in developing and running national telemedicine and national on-site medicine programs. That's what I've done for a living. I did on-site medicine with Premise, Premise, helped form that company and make it national. They provide on-site at the workplace, healthcare, primary care, and prevention. I was chief medical officer for MDLIVE. Again, a huge telemedicine program, the number 2 size telemedicine program now. And I also have helped build another program called K Health. K, like the letter K, Health, a large national text-based and telemedicine program. So I would like, my biggest challenge with all of those was, number one, with Premise, it was getting more access to people that weren't employed, like families. But with the other two, MDLIVE and K Health, one of my biggest challenges was getting them away from urgent care. For the most part, it's just an urgent care environment, a digital urgent care, a digital ER. That's not where the health impact is. The health impact is on chronic diseases, things like we were just talking about: prediabetes, diabetes, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, things that are risk for heart attack and stroke. So now that's what we're doing. We're going next into developing a program that will provide that kind of access to anybody in the country with Medicare or a corresponding type of insurance. So give us a call or check us out at our website. Not going to talk about the book today because we've got another book to talk about. Now, I did mention the GLP-1s, GLP-1. That stands for glucagon-like protein. This is going to be our short content before we bring on our guests for today. And again, it's on those GLP-1s. And of the GLP-1s, again, it's on Ozempic or semaglutide. It's a little bit more information that came out. Let's go through some of it. GLP-1s have had game-changing COVT results for diabetes. Again, cardiovascular outcome trials. So like I said, with one thing that we have, as a profession, medicine has gotten smart enough to realize is, in testing diabetes drugs, it's not so important to find out what it does for diabetes, if it prevents further diabetes. What's more important is, does it prevent cardiovascular outcomes? So that's what we're talking about. Given the impact of body fat on insulin resistance, it's not a surprise. These are also the most effective weight loss drugs ever, the safest and most effective, including Mounjaro or tirzepatide. If you haven't heard of Mounjaro or tirzepatide, it's these others are called incretins. And if somebody has an interest in what that means, ask me later in the Q&A section. We can talk about it. Mounjaro has a double incretin effect, so now it's called a twincretin, a whole new type. And gosh, it even beat semaglutide. Very, very interesting drug opportunities coming up. Now, here's the thing. They cannot overcome a lifestyle problem, though. We know that. One of our recent guests, Will Gillum, said, yeah, I've been on one of the GLP-1s for 2 years and still didn't lose any weight because I didn't know that I had to work at it, kind of thing. I was distracted. I knew at some point I needed to do it. I was still wrapping up my career in a very busy hospital executive environment. And I retired. And then I focused on lifestyle. I started meeting with you, Ford. We started talking about some of the lifestyle issues. Lost 40 pounds in just a few months. So yes, these drugs are great. They're a huge help, but there's no drug that's going to replace a lifestyle problem. What's the biggest barrier to these drugs? It's still costs. But as the cardiovascular outcome trials continue to come out, Medicare and other insurers are coming under a lot more pressure to say, look, they may be expensive, but the population being obese is even more expensive in terms of healthcare. So here's the big news. I just found that, so routinely Ozempic, which is the most common choice out of these GLP-1s, is about $1,000 per month. Well, just recently I got some information about a Canada pharmacy. So it's interesting. I've got a lot of patients that access Pivasta or pitavastatin, the very expensive statin. That's very expensive because it hasn't lost its patent yet either. And a lot of folks are getting pitavastatin from Canadian pharmacies. Well, if you look here now, Ozempic, now the Canadian pharmacies are starting to offer Ozempic. And the bottom line is their cost, your cost through them is about a quarter to a third of what it would be if you had to pay full price here in the United States. I'm not advocating going to Canadian pharmacies. I have tried them for Pivasta, because I've got my own personal commitments about trying anything that I cover like this in the channel. Prescriptions required, shipping costs $40, takes about 4 to 10 days, and you can order it about every 3 months. So very interesting. I've not tried this one yet, Ozempic through a Canadian pharmacy, and I might not because I've also shared. Last month I became Medicare eligible, so I'm getting mine now through some clinic samples and through Medicare. So let's go to the topic for today. So thank you so much, Aspen. Usually Gilbert covers for us in terms of hosting, but Gilbert had some some distractions for today, and Aspen's covering. So, well, I'm hearing a little bit of echo. That might be coming from yours, Daniel. Are you able to mute while I'm talking?
Sure.
Okay. So look at that blue-eyed headshot there. As I said, this fella has experience in showbiz and experience in actually owns a company that provides skin care treatments. And so he knows this space. He knows appearance. He's a professional in these spaces. And he's done a great job, obviously, on taking care of that. But, he said to me while we were getting ready for the video today, he said, I coulda, woulda, shoulda done a lot of things differently if I'd known a little bit more about taking care of those arteries, my insides. So, Daniel, I'll hand it over to you, and we will go from there.
Oh, my God. I don't know how to... this whole super senior thing, that's a little bit over the top for me, but yeah. So, well, like you said, I do have a company, Nutrinuva, and I sell anti-aging skincare because having been in showbiz in the early part of my life, from the age of about 15 to late 30s, you were expected to have a good appearance and take care of yourself and that kind of thing. And so I had learned from various makeup artists, and they'd say, hey, you want to take care of your skin's good, you want to keep it that way, this is what you do. And I'd always been interested in researching anything that I was interested in and taking a deep dive into the science, which is what I did for this book, as you know. And so that's what I do on the side. Now I'm just looking to get this book launched. And you know how that can be. It's one of those things that moves at a glacial pace, the publishing industry. And but anyway, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and really appreciate you having me. We finally did it because we've been talking about this for a while. And to let your audience know, I had gone through a heart attack, and it was early on a Saturday morning. It was probably around 6 a.m. or so, and I started feeling a strange sensation in my throat area, and it didn't seem right because it was accompanied by cold sweats. Now that was really unusual. So I went to consult Dr. Google, and I typed in heart attack symptoms because I wasn't sure, and so I just did that, and I got a whole way bigger list of symptoms than I expected to find, and I'm checking them off. No, and I get to the last one. It says cold sweats. So I had both my daughters had just gone off to college, and so I was an empty nester, and I thought I'd downsize, and I had just grabbed a top floor unit in a brand new high-rise apartment building. It was beautiful, but it was right across the street what turned out to be one of the top destination heart hospitals in the country. And but didn't have all the screaming ambulances and all that. It wasn't one of those where ambulances would take people, even though they did have a small ER. So I got dressed, went down to the first floor, walked across the street, walked in and said, look, I'm having some weird symptoms. Okay, follow me. Pretty soon I was having my blood drawn to check to see if it had this protein called troponin at much higher than normal levels, that along with a 12.8 kg. And pretty soon came a positive for myocardial infarction, which is the technical or medical term for heart attack. So anyway, that was pretty much a mind blower for me right there. And then I texted my daughters, they came, and I wound up with a 4-day hospitalization and a stent. And it was not fun because I don't know if anybody's ever spent time in a hospital, but it's definitely not fun, especially when you think that you're in good shape and you're healthy. And that was certainly me. I thought I was Mr. Healthy. And so anyway, it became my mission to find out, how did this happen to me? And so I immediately started attending Google University and YouTube University, and I came across this video, the title of which was something like how to reverse 20 years of arterial plaque like I did, by some guy named Dr. Ford Brewer. I thought, well, I need to watch this. So that was the beginning of my journey, and that was such an eye-opener. I got to tell you, Doc, it was just you showed exactly what happens in a heart attack. And, most of us out here, we think that it's kind of like a shower drain where there's hair and soap and grease and all that, and it clogs up the arteries. And that's not it at all. So it was a very big eye opener. And then you held up a book. It was called Beat the Heart Attack Gene. I ordered that before the video ended. And that came, and I went through that, and then I just subscribed to your channel, and that led to a whole evolution of going down a lot of rabbit holes to find out how the hell could this happen to, excuse my French, Mr. Healthy, because I was taking all the right supplements. I worked out 3 times a week. I watched what I ate, but I didn't know some of the things that could really cause your insulin to go up and your blood sugar. And I didn't know, and most people don't know, and that's why we need you out in the world more, and we need the book out, is that they don't know that blood sugar and insulin are the key drivers for cardiovascular disease, resulting in strokes and heart attacks and other silent diseases, as you know. So anyway, that's what started me on this journey. And I had been accustomed to studying anything technical that I was interested in. I had to be interested in it basically by painstakingly trying not to go beyond words that I didn't understand. Because if you do that, you're just, forget it. You're going to stop reading the book or stop reading whatever you're reading on the internet. You got to clear up these words with, whether you use Google or a dictionary, you know, you just have to do that. So anyway, I did a tremendous amount of study, hundreds of hours of study and research connecting these dots. And it was just such a mind blower for me. And it was so great to find this out. And I thought, I need to share this with my family and friends. And so I had been chronicling all of my research as well as my own personal gains and what had happened to me. And then someone said, look, Daniel, family and friends is fine, but what about the rest of us out here? You need to share this with the world. So then it turned into becoming a book. And there you go. So that's my short right at the beginning.
Speaking of the book, so it talks about unholy trinity, carbs, sugars, and oils. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it's how carbs, sugar, and oils make us fat, sick, and addicted, and how to escape their grip, because they are addicting, especially when you find out that big food puts ingredients into some of these packaged foods purposefully to stimulate our opiate receptors. And it's not for getting high or getting, you know, relieving pain. It's to turn on your dopamine. So you need a dopamine fix every now and then, and you eat more of their products.
It's addictive.
And so, yeah, so that's, you know, you have to be able to escape the grip. I mean, you can do it. I did it. Anyone can do it. It's just a matter of certain tips and tricks that I have in the book of how to go about doing that. And as you can see, it says Daniel Trevor from heart attack to 34 pull-ups, because, you know, the publishers, they want something that's kind of in your face and like something, you know, so wow. And I did get up to 34 pull-ups, and because, you know, a lot of the guys at the gym are like impressed, especially because most guys in their 20s and 30s can't do 6, right?
It's true.
And so I had worked at that. And then underneath that, you'll see it says, with physician and international best-selling author, Dr. Ford Brewer. So everyone, that's we're looking to get that out by the fall. And so that's what's happening there.
For those of you who are curious, Daniel started sharing this information with me. And one of the things I said was, Daniel, dang, this is so interesting. I'd never written a book before the one that we talked about earlier today, the one about why a stress test doesn't work. Published plenty of articles, but they were all academic and not this kind of prose. So I did that with Todd. And the real book that I wanted to write was going to talk a lot more about lifestyle, things that can kill you that most people obviously just don't know about. So when Daniel sent me this book, I said, dang, Daniel, you know what? You've written it for me. You wrote it. So I was very excited about what I saw. And I said, you know what? By that point, I was way deep, eyeball deep in terms of the Alabama project. And didn't know whether I was ever going to get to writing that book or not. And also felt like, not sure that I need to at this point with what Daniel's put out there. So very, very well researched. You've got how many references in there, Daniel? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's 1,106. So nobody can say that this is Daniel's opinion. This is all based on science. A lot of randomized controlled trials, which for your audience, that's where, let's say you have two groups and you give one group the investigation vitamin or way of eating or whatever it is they're testing, and another group has something else, and you test them, and let's say it's 1,000 people or 10,000 people over a certain amount of time, whether it's 6 months, 2 years. And it's basically a management by statistics, in that you say, okay, so X number of people did this and X number of people did that, and we followed them over this amount of time, and this is what the results showed in their blood labs, in their musculature, and so on and so forth, and in your cardiovascular outcome trials, right? And Dr. Ford wrote chapter 22, which is the longest chapter in the book, and he does a brilliant job in explaining just exactly what are the most important tests that anyone can buy online inexpensively without needing their doctor's prescription, so that they can discover if they've got something lurking that's ready to jump out at them. And that's so important because most people don't realize another thing is that they're all silent diseases, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, they're all silent diseases. There's no symptoms until you're way down the line and it's a long road back, or it's just too late. Because, well, you know, Doc, that statistic, over 50% of the people who have a first heart attack, their death was their first symptom.
Yep.
I mean, can you, death is the first symptom. So you have to test, not guess, which is what Dr. Ford calls his title, calls his chapter. Test, don't guess. It's perfect.
You bring up a good point, and that is that continued push to try to make this more accessible to more people. When I was at Hopkins, it was really much more, my role at that point was really much more into public health. Public health is the standard, old school preventive medicine. At Hopkins, you ask somebody there, they'll say, yeah, we're talking about denominator medicine. And it gets, that's sort of a technical term. But it gets back to providing stuff for everybody, not just folks that own their own airplane. In terms of this journey on getting better access to folks, when I retired from, I think this was my second retirement. It was from Premise On-Site Health. I had some friends, I was living in Nashville at that time, and I had some friends who said, hey, there's this guy that does prevention for individuals. It's extremely expensive. A lot of his patients have their own airplane. It's $3,000 to $5,000 for evaluation. But given your background in this, I'd love for you to come see him. So I went to see him, and his name was Brad Bale, and that's the Bale-Donene method. Brad actually teamed up with me for a couple of years out of my practice, and he and I split in a couple of ways. The biggest split was Brad was more interested in continuing non-insured type of care, and I, from the very beginning, struggled to say, okay, what are ways that we can make this life-saving information? Yes, the clinical information was good, maybe needed a little bit more emphasis on undiagnosed prediabetes, but otherwise very, very good information. And how could we start getting that out there to the masses? So I don't know if you've seen David Wright, Dr. David Wright, who's appeared on my channel several times. Dr. Wright has developed a program where it basically, you don't have to go to an expensive direct pay doc like me now, or David, or some of the other docs, Craig Bax that has appeared on our channel as well. You can just go to myhealthplan.com and it starts asking you questions. Myhealthplan.com is sort of like the prevention / Bale-Donene equivalent of K-Health. You can go in, have zero training in this space, zero technical understanding, and just start answering the questions, and it'll tell you the exact labs that you need to get. So that was yet another step in making this more and more available to people. And Daniel, as you know, you pushed me hard in writing chapter 21 to say, Ford, I want this to be stuff that people can get on their own. They don't have to pay hundreds, thousands, or even hundreds of dollars to get this information. And I, again, like so many things in life, what doesn't kill you it sometimes helps. And you really did help push me along that space of getting more access. I'll end up with the final comment. So given the work that we've done in Alabama with insurance programs, especially Medicare, I'm very excited to be able to say that, yep, we're going to be able to start offering this kind of care through just basic Medicare types of practices. So very, very excited about making that progression from patients that own their own airplane to the rest of us working folks.
That's wonderful. And I have to encourage your viewers to definitely check out Dr. Ford's courses, because it's all about learning about what works for human bodies that you don't get from the healthcare system. I mean, let's face it, we have to take responsibility for our own health, because we don't get health from the healthcare system, right? We get revenue generating activity, but we don't get health. I mean, I love that quote that, let's see, it was cardiologist Dr. William Davis. He has a book called Undoctored: Why Healthcare Has Failed You and How You Can Become Smarter Than Your Doctor. And he's got this great quote which says, let's see, do I have it here? It says, hamburger contains no ham, grape nut cereal contains neither grapes or nuts, and health does not come from the healthcare system.
It's a great quote.
It's just, yeah, it's wonderful. So, you know, we really do have to take responsibility for our own health, because as Dr. Ford said, our frontline practitioners know nothing about what's in this book that's going to be coming out and what's on Dr. Ford's channel. And how many people know that if you have cardiovascular disease, or just vascular disease, period, because I don't want to just confine it to the heart, you can have a stroke or that, heart disease, you are an undiagnosed pre-diabetic or full-blown type 2 diabetic and don't know it. That's what my mind blower was to me. I didn't need to lose weight, anything like that. And I thought, I can't, there's no way. And then when I went and got the OGTT with insulin, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, because I was always thought that you have to be overweight or obese to be pre-diabetic or diabetic, which then is the source of so many other of these silent diseases, especially vascular disease, because of the damage that the carbs, sugar, and oils do to the vascular system. So, take Dr. Ford's courses. They're not complicated. He explains everything very clearly. So I'd like to give that plug for your courses.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I've got a couple of things I want to ask you about. So the Unholy Trinity, the book, if somebody wants to access that, how do they do that?
Well, it's not available right now because I'm, dealing with what I have is what's called in the publishing industry, it's called a pre-publication advanced reader copy. And an advanced reader copy is what authors use to send around to certain opinion leaders to get their endorsement that will go on the back of the book or the inside front cover. So that's where I am right now. And by the way, I think I sent it to you. Dr. Ovadia, who was on your show last week, he wrote me a killer endorsement. I love that because he's, cardiothoracic surgeon, has done over 3,000 heart operations and bypass and this and that. And so that carries a lot of weight. And also, as you also know, I got one from Dr. Louis Ignarro, who won the Nobel Prize in medicine. I mean, what, are you kidding me? I'm like, whoa. And so then I really know that we have something here and it's going to be very valuable. And he won the Nobel Prize for his discovery of nitric oxide, as you know, which has a lot to do with a healthy vasculature. But so that's what's happening with the book. I'm expecting it. I'm hoping for the fall, in other words, October, November at the latest, depending on which direction a few things go. But I'll keep you posted and you can have me back on and we can do a launch party.
Love to do it because When we talked about having you on, one of the questions that you had was, well, Ford, what do we want to cover? And it's like, well, and I told you the story. I said, that sort of reminds me of when I decided to do a book review on Lifespan by David Sinclair. And it's like, I started with the idea of doing an 8-minute review, and I ended up, every chapter of his book was something I had dozens of videos on. So it ended up being a 10 video series. And like I said, yep, same stuff with your book. Once it gets out there. What's that?
I got 27 chapters, so have me on as much.
There we go. And in fact, I think we want to talk about one of those chapters today, the one on exercise. But before we do, you mentioned something a few minutes ago that to me is critical. It's like, hey, doc, you talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but what do you recommend? What's the simplest, easiest way? Well, here's the thing. As you mentioned, hey, Ford, I was thin. I took care of myself. I was muscular. I was pretty sure I didn't have diabetes or prediabetes. And then I took that OGTT and insulin test. Tell us a little bit more about that, because if I had one wish, if I had one wish before I died, it would be to get everybody an OGTT and insulin response.
No, it's perfect. You're right. I mean, you even have it in that chapter. You just say right up in probably in the second or third paragraph, listen, before we get into all these tests, if I could have you do one test, do the OGTT with insulin test, and to find out if you're normal, pre-diabetic, diabetic. Basically, it's a time test, as you know, and once you look at the numbers, there's just no questioning that you're in a certain range, and that tells the truth. There's no denying what you've got there. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. But I turned out to be kind of like, there's a Dr. Peter Attia who used to be an endurance swimmer, and, triathlons and all that. And he was lean and fit and everything, but he tested type 2 diabetic too. But that's because he was addicted to Gatorade, which has so much sugar and so many carbohydrates. It's like he drank it like he had stock in the company or something, right? And so if Gatorade was his downfall, mine was the air quotes coming at you, heart healthy whole grains.
Yeah.
That was my downfall. This heart healthy whole grains. I had no idea how dangerous they were. And especially as you get older, you can't metabolize them like you did when you were 22.
Yep.
You just metabolize them, and then they start to damage the arterial wall, which we talk about in the book. So anyway, I discovered that, and it was all because of following your instruction that I heard in one of your videos. I thought, oh man, I got to get that test. And I thought, there's no way. There's no way. Because, I didn't eat much sugar. It was mostly these grains, which turn into sugar once you ingest them. And that's what happened to me. And I discovered, it turned out after I did lots of tests, after my heart attack, what I decided to do after I discovered your information, I decided to get a lot of testing done to get a foundational point to be able to measure my progress, because I was dedicated to fixing this. So I thought, let me get all the tests that I can possibly get to find out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I can measure it over time. I even got this cardio, the CAC score, the
calcium score.
Yeah. And I had a bad score, it was like 600 or something, but I decided to take it again like 18 months later, but 18 months later, I was closer to, as you call it, the super senior. And believe me, I was never in the shape that I'm in now. With the amount of fat loss that just burns away when you go low carb, and when you exercise in a low carb state, the muscles build up and the fat just disappears. You kind of go toward, if you're really into it, you turn more into like Bruce Lee, who was, I don't think he had an ounce of fat on his body, right?
He did.
And so my point being behind that was I took the CAC test again after 18 months, and it over quadrupled to like 2,500 or something like that. And that's because, and that's what a lot of people have to learn, that they can't depend on their calcium score, or if they get one, that it's going to go down. What I did was I was able to, and along with a lot of your patients, as you have told us, I was able to stabilize all of these soft, dangerous plaque that was built up in my arteries. And because that's the cause of the strokes and the heart attacks, is the soft, liquefied, inflamed plaque, which, if you've already got a damaged endothelial, which is the lining of the artery for your viewers, well, you have a very sophisticated audience, so I'm sure they know what the endothelial is. Yeah. So that plaque can more easily rupture through the endothelial and enter the lumen, which is where the blood flows. And when this hot inflamed plaque touches blood, it creates a clot, breaks off, and it goes downstream. And if it goes to your heart, you have a heart attack. Goes to your brain, you have a stroke. So that's why vascular health is so incredibly important. And that's why I cover it a great deal in the book.
So speaking of the book, we were going to talk about one of the chapters in the book that I think is, it's somewhat, it's not unique to you, but it's a story that you're very, very much aware of, very in tune with. Let me see which. Chapter 9 on page 96, exercising in a fasted state. So I'm going to embarrass you for a second. So this is what? This is you when you were in your 20s in college?
You're too kind. You're too kind. No, that was last year. These quick pictures, I'm 73.
73 years old. That's impressive. And again, we said this is your business. You with your background and the business you own, you need to be here. But you weren't able to keep this kind of 6-pack, 8-pack when you were pre-low carb, were you?
No. Look, you're very kind, but I didn't have any of this before, and I don't do this for my skincare company. I don't need any of this. I did this for me. But when it came to the book, someone said, well, look, it's fine that you can tell about your gains and wins, but you need to show them.
Yeah.
This is a show me society now. They want the video, they want the picture. And I thought, okay, so let me try to find a fitness photographer that will be kind to me, because I didn't know anything. I have to confess that I didn't know what the hell I was doing in these, she had to give me, he or she, I had 2 different photographers, turn more to the left or look down or raise your right hand higher. I didn't know what I was doing. So you have to give them credit for any of and their lighting and all that kind of thing. So, but anyway, just don't call me Zoolander.
So, yeah. I get all that, but as you pointed out, there's real reason for this. Folks need to understand what you accomplished at age 73. And I will tell you, my typical patient. So a couple of things to know about the folks watching this channel. Over half of the folks watching this, it's not your typical YouTube channel. Over half of us are 55 or older. And 3/4 of us are men. So there's not a channel or an audience that's more interested in what you have to show there. And I will go back and say that's the group that my patient population comes out of. If I've heard it once, gosh, I've heard it hundreds of times. Hey, doc, I started cutting my carbs, and I'm now as thin as I was when I was in high school, when I was in college, etc. But it's not just cutting carbs. Cutting carbs is the most important step and the first step. But you're demonstrating some things there too. There's also an issue with muscle mass. And you mentioned it earlier about the, as we start down that slippery slope at age 50, by age 65, on average, most of us have significant cardiovascular inflammation associated with loss of muscles. Now, how does loss of muscle create health problems in our arteries? It's really, really simple. There are two ways of decreasing blood sugar. Blood sugar and insulin cause cardiovascular inflammation. They irritate the lining of the artery wall, that endothelium that you mentioned a couple of times earlier. That endothelium has a mucousy type of consistency on the inside. And that mucus consistency is made up similar to mucus in your nose, except it's fibrous. It's made up mostly of glucose. It's called a glycoprotein. So you bathe the glycoprotein in glucose and it starts to dissolve. And that's what's going on with our arteries. We spend too much time at blood sugar 140 and above, and we're going to have plaque. So there's a very, very real connection between the pictures that we're seeing here, the muscle mass, the decrease in body fat, and arterial health. So we talked a little bit about glucose. Now, what do muscles have to do with glucose? Well, as I said a minute ago, there are two ways that your body decreases and controls glucose in your blood. One is with insulin. But guess what? By the time we're age 30, over half of us are starting to get resistant to insulin. And guess what? If you've heard it once on my channel and you've listened long enough, you've heard it 1,000 times where I use that term, insulin resistance. That's exactly what's going on. Body fat causes increased insulin resistance. Aging causes increased insulin resistance. And for some of us, genetics do. Is there anything that helps? Yes, and it's called muscle mass, muscle performance. So it's really, really clear. If muscles are performing, they bypass ailing insulin receptors and pull that sugar out of the blood and pull it into the muscle where it does not do damage. So, yep, you can. People can give you a lot of grief on the Zoolander thing and your profession and stuff like that, but there's very, very real health impact for our generation, for our demographic, middle-aged males, in terms of getting a body that looks like what we had up there, looks like what you've got. So let's talk a little bit about what you did. We talked a little bit about low carbs. Let's talk about the other components. It's not just low carbs, right?
Well, definitely low carb, keto, depending on which you can handle. Everything at a gradient. You want to go step by step. You don't want to go too fast in anything. You just want to do it at a gradual pace. And what I wound up doing was, in my research, I found that those who exercised in a fasted state, they would do, let's see, I think it was the Journal of Physiology. They had two groups. One group did fed exercise, the other one did fasted exercise. And after a couple of months, they ate the same, they did everything the same, they examined them and so forth in different ways. The ones that did fasted exercise lost 300% more fat mass than the fed group. I mean, both groups were in good shape, but it's just that the ones that did the fasted exercise got ripped. And I don't know if you remember it's been a Hollywood secret to Hollywood trainers for years that they would do fasted exercise. Even that guy, what's his name? Hugh Jackman, that was the Wolverine.
Yeah,
completely ripped. And he did that doing the 16-hour intermittent fasting, as you've talked about. And it's not that hard once you get used to it. First, you do 12 hours if you can only last that. And then you push it to 13, 14, and pretty soon you're able to go the 16 hours and you don't get hungry, is the thing. A lot of times people eat in the morning because out of habit. And what I do, one of my tips I could give you and the audience is that what I do is, and I learned this in my research, is that I just have one 12-ounce cup of coffee that I put C8 MCT oil powder in. It's MCT, medium chain triglycerides. Why that? Well, that turns on ketones, which also suppress your appetite. And I also put a bunch of butter in. Why the butter? For you to go between meals without snacking, you want to have as much fat, healthy fats now, in your meal, whether it's fatty salmon or fatty burger or whatever, because it's satiating. Carbohydrates do not satisfy hunger. They stimulate it. So the more carbs you eat, the more carbs you're going to want. It's kind of like, you ever have a few slices of pizza? You can't stop. You want 3 or 4 more slices, right? Or at least you want to eat again in an hour. That's the carb saying, eat now. And so doing the intermittent fasting really helped a lot. So I had done that first, and then I tried the fasted exercise, because you got to do one thing at a time. Because if you go too fast, you're going to wind up saying, oh yeah, I tried that intermittent fasting stuff, but it doesn't work. But you didn't do it right. You went too fast. You just have to go at your own pace. But it builds more muscle. You lose more fat mass. There's brain development that they've discovered. There was a study that showed that there was an activation of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which grows new brain cells. And it's very evolutionarily consistent with what these meat bodies that we have are used to doing for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. I mean, just think about it. When our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they needed to be very clever and creative while they were hunting. And they were hungry or starving, and they were hunting, and they had to. And so you have this natural brain-derived neurotrophic factor that they call it, that just allows them to be smarter and clever and so forth. So that turns that on, and it suppresses your appetite. But there was some studies that there was this one big one that I think I sent you. It was over 9,000 people. It was 9,100 people. It was between the ages of, I have it here, between the ages of 20 and 82. They followed them for 15 years. And the researchers found, quote, mortality rates were lower for individuals with moderate to high muscular fitness compared to individuals with low muscular fitness, right? So, and that it was a great benefit to all of the metabolic syndrome markers, which is triglycerides, your A1C, hemoglobin A1C, blood pressure, waist circumference, and which is a shame. These days, the study shows, 88% of the population has metabolic syndrome. They either have a low HDL, high triglycerides, high A1C, high blood pressure, waist circumference. Everything is out of range. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And our goal is we want to become one of the 12% who are metabolically healthy, right?
So Dan, can you see? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, there's the chart. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's one over 40. Let's see. It's a large systematic review article, was done on over 95 studies. So this is a compilation of all data of 95 studies, and I'll explain this chart. And this measured, they looked at blood glucose, total cholesterol, HDL, A1C, and so forth. And it basically, they wanted to see what the difference was between patient groups after 4 months of either doing resistance training with the weight machines or free weights or cardio training, cardio aerobics, that kind of thing. They wanted to find out what was the difference in the benefits. And basically, simply speaking, is the black bars that you see, they represent the degree of improvements for those doing resistance training. And again, this is all people over 40. And so the black bars represent the degree of improvements for those doing resistance training. The white bars represent the degree of improvements for those doing aerobics or cardio training. I mean, if you can even see the white bars. So as you can easily see, the improvements in these important metabolic markers, such as blood glucose, A1C, triglycerides, and so on, were much greater with a resistance training than with cardio for those over 40. So if you're over 40, the point is you want to get off of the treadmills and the bikes. It's funny. I have this graph on my phone, and there's a couple of guys at the gym. They're probably my age, and they're pretty much, they're way overweight, just to put it mildly. One's a beast, I guess. They're great guys. They're my buddies, And I go, why are you spending so much time on this machine? And I'm trying to explain to them that they've done studies, and I show them this graph. I say, do you see the black bars? And you see all these? That's the degree of improvement you get if you're over 40 doing resistance training. And the white bars show the benefits of doing what you're doing right now. Which would you rather have?
I don't think there's any question for the folks on the channel and in this audience. Let me ask you, this is about resistance training. Did you find anything similar in terms of interval training?
I don't do that. I didn't find that too comfortable for me. And so I push myself, but I tend to these days, especially after what I went through, I listen to my body. And when I do that, it's a little much for me these days. I don't know, man. I call it being 73 or 74. Yeah, I just turned 74. So I just stick with the way I get my cardio in, I guess you could say, is that I just shorten the rest time in between the sets. Instead of resting for 2 or 3 minutes after you do a heavy duty set of reps, you shorten that. And if you do that, you will be huffing and puffing, right? So you will be getting cardio in. And the interval training, you're talking about the high intensity training.
So what kind of, do you measure your heart rate when you're doing that?
I don't. I just go at it.
Yeah, sometime if you do, it would be helpful to do that. You are not alone. I find more people getting into the 60s and 70s saying, the resistance training I'm okay with. I had a patient like that yesterday, but in his late 50s, and he said it's just the interval training just wears me out. But one of the things I find is that a lot of people that are doing this resistance training are actually getting interval training, as you mentioned, because they're getting their heart rates up into the 130s, 140s, even 150s, and keeping it there for 30 to 90 seconds, and then coming out, going quickly within 30 to 90 seconds over to the next machine and doing it again with something else. So you're actually getting an interval. A lot of you are. When you're doing you think you're just doing resistance.
Right. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not in any contest to be the king of this machine or that machine at the gym or the king of pull-ups. I just want to be healthy, live a long, energetic life. And as long as my blood labs are looking good and, I'm feeling good, I don't see the reason why I need to push myself into something that I really don't need. Right.
Very good point. So, as you and I talked, we said, there's so many topics we could cover. And then we said, look, you know what? if you just tell your story and we talk about fasted exercise, that's probably going to take us into an hour. And yep, we've been going a little over an hour already. I think what we like to do is give audience members a chance to ask questions. So if you
Sure.
have any, if you have any recap you want to provide, go ahead and do that. And then I would suggest we get into Q&A.
Well, I did want to have one proviso. I think I mentioned it, that you don't want to try fasted exercise until you've done intermittent fasting 16 hours or however long it's a minimum of 16. I do 18 or 19 a day. But once you can conquer that and you're comfortable and you have the hunger disappear, because that's what happens when you have more ketones from the low carb, healthy diet, you get in a state of ketosis and your hunger disappears. That's why keto is also known as the never hungry diet, right? And you want to eat, first step you want to do is you want to get rid of the snacks, because a lot of people are eating 3 times a day, major meals, and then they have 3 snacks a day. Your first step, remove one of the snacks. And then you want to get rid of all the snacks eventually. And the best way to do that, the easiest way, is make sure you have enough healthy fats in the meal to get you from one meal to the next. But you do need to get through the intermittent fasting first. At least I would suggest that before you start doing the fasted exercise. But if you're fasting or not fasting, you got to do exercise, because an emphasis on the word regular. You can't do it once a week. It's got to be. I go 4 times a week to the gym, 4 times a week. And that's enough for me. And there you go. So that's the only wrap up I want to give right there about what we just talked about.
And a lot of people ask me what I do. I get 2 to 3 intense workouts per week. I've got the best the best gym I've ever had, the closest I've ever had. It's literally 100 yards away from me, and it's a local YMCA. Now, 2 to 3 times a week, I get over there and I'll do some pretty significant hill runs on a treadmill, getting my heart rate up into the 150s, do 5 to 10 intervals. And then I go over to the weight machines and I do the same thing you're talking about, one machine to the next, to the next. About every day I get at least, sometimes as low as 5,000 steps, but a couple of days ago it was 30,000. So what I'll do is when I'm on business meetings, I walk out in the back area where we are and walk while I'm in the meeting on the phone. So get a lot of aerobics. And again, people ask me a lot, hey doc, what do you do? So that's what I do. So unless you have anything else, I'll ask Aspen to give us the transition and we'll go into Q&A. So there we go. Thank you again, Daniel. It was a great discussion. And again, I appreciate you sharing a lot more than a lot of our other folks would. But again, that's very, very helpful information for our viewership.
Hey, I wrote the book on it.
There you go.
With your help, the book is tremendously much better with your chapter in there. And yeah, so there you go.
So thank you much. ET himself says, oops, I deleted this. Now I found it. I mentioned a few months ago that I've been taking 100% organic aloe vera juice for pain and inflammation, lower spine and a knee injury, both permanent. I cannot find the active components. Any ideas? Not from me. How about from you, Daniel?
I don't know that. No, I don't know about aloe vera juice. I know it's pretty good for your stomach, but other than that, I don't really know the studies involved in relieving pain.
We got a good morning from Bambi Grades. Bambi is what, I think in the 70s, maybe a little bit older. Unless I'm mistaken, Bambi might be doing some some significant resistance work as well. I think you may have shared that in the past. Good morning to you, Bambi. Hope I got that right. ET, head to edit is the 200 character limit. I'll finish by asking any ideas as to a reliable source to find the active ingredients. Not from me. Sounds like not from you either, Daniel. Is that right?
No, I don't know that. Yeah, I haven't gone down that bunny hole. Lots of other ones, but not that one.
Not that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Bobby Ocampo, Mabuhay, and Aspen's on. Bobby is in the Philippines, and Mabuhay means something sort of like live long and prosper. Bart Robinson, greetings, my friends from New Jersey, unless I got that wrong. ET himself from British Columbia, Canada, here on the West Coast. Michael Sanders, good morning from Arizona. Bobby Ocampo, as isosorbide binitrate low dose help improve nitric oxide. Well, obviously it's in that same space. And again, as Daniel mentioned earlier, we've got the guy, Lou Ignarro, who discovered this, won the Nobel Prize for it. And he committed to come onto the channel and talk about some of this. I think this would be a great question for him. These are all in those nitrates. And the discovery that they made was nitrates actually expand the blood vessels, the arteries. It's an interesting way the idea originally came up. And I discovered that when I was working in toxicology, working with workers. The workers that worked with TNT, trinitrotoluene, the explosives. Explosive manufacture, a lot of that came from Sweden. And Alfred Nobel made all his money that goes to the Nobel Prize by his early work in explosives. Now, the workers in his plants noticed that they could get angina, heart pain, as they were getting older. They'd get it at home, but when they'd come back to work, it would go away. So they began to realize something they were being exposed to in the workplace was decreasing their angina. And again, I'll hold that the rest of that story until Dr. Ignarro joins us. Harvey Ops, don't forget to like or click the thumbs up button. Thank you so much, Harvey. I forget that myself, so I appreciate it if you guys will do that. We've already had one super chat from Tired Looking for Name. Super chats are a great way to support us getting this information out all over the world. As I mentioned, Asia is a big consumer of our content and growing rapidly. And so we certainly appreciate folks like Tired Looking for Name making a contribution. But Harvey, as you point out, it costs absolutely nothing to click on a like button. And what that like button does is it tells the AI, the artificial intelligence, the algorithm, hey, this is important information. Humans are interested in this. So it helps pull them into these videos, this content. Another great way to do that, again, absolutely zero cost to you, is to put references to this content on your other social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those. So when somebody comes in from one of those other social media platforms to look at this content, the AI realizes this is important stuff. So thank you again, Harvey. ET himself, 2 thumbs up. Seems like we can't leave comments below the thumbs up department under the vid. Wonder what's going on there. I know 2 older men on metformin who are quite heavy, lost a lot of weight over a few years. Who knew? Interesting point. I have it all the time, and I have it especially with women with PCO, polycystic ovary disease. And I know, Daniel, you cover that in the book. Metformin has been a major support for a lot of people in terms of weight loss. Again, especially those younger women with PCO. Any other comment in that space, Daniel? I know you covered that.
Yeah, well, no, not just that, but I wanted to, the previous comment was asking about nitric oxide and what they could do to increase it. I have a whole section in chapter 17, as you know, especially after I discovered Dr. Ignaro and his work, and recently reached out to him, and I was able to find his direct email, and he responded, and that's how I got to meet him and sent him the book, which he loves, and got that great endorsement, and then wound up introducing him to you and getting on your channel. So the nitric oxide, you want a couple of good tips on how to bring that about. You see, just like the doc says, it helps to expand the arteries because we need that. It keeps us from having high blood pressure and helps with cardiovascular disease, erectile dysfunction. As a matter of fact, nitric oxide is why Viagra works. In fact, Dr. Liu's book is called Nitric Oxide, The Discovery That Led to a Nobel Prize and Viagra. His discovery of this, nitric oxide was how they were able to come about with his science helped them create Viagra, which has helped I think one or two men around the world over the last number of years. But it's just, it's really something you really want to augment. There's supplements like L-arginine and L-citrulline. I personally take L-citrulline. And there's also beetroot powder, capsules or juice. That helps create nitric oxide because you do want to get those arteries open. High blood pressure is it's so damaging. You can speak to it better than I can, but you really want to do is whatever you can. You got to get yourself a blood pressure monitor. You got to keep an eye on that because that high blood pressure can do so much damage to the endothelial and the various junction points and so forth. But so I would definitely load up, if you're going to load up on anything, L-citrulline, which is in powder or capsules. There's even studies. I take it before I go to the gym. There was a study. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Okay, here we go. A study done in 2010 of two groups of athletes, one group taking L-citrulline, the other a placebo, showed a sharp increase of nitric oxide as well as human growth hormone in the group taking the citrulline, which took 6 grams of it before the exercise routine. Another similar study of men doing weight training showed that the participants could perform 53% more repetitions after ingesting 8 grams of citrulline compared to the placebo. So I get that in me before I go to the gym. So I do that. And I forget who was asking about that. Oh yeah, Bobby. Bobby from Jersey, right?
Philippines.
Oh yeah, somebody was from Jersey and they went, "Hey, I'm Philly boy."
Yep.
Oh yeah, Bart.
That was Bart.
Hey Bart. So yeah, if you want to get beetroot powder or L-citrulline powder or capsules, and that's the way you can load up on it if you want to load up. But you want to get it in you. And exercise. Exercise is a brilliant way to turn on nitric oxide. Regular exercise.
Very good points.
Yeah.
So that's ET's responding as well, just like you and I, that, yep, increased nitric oxide, increasing it is a very good thing. And you know what? It's a good point. I bet we could increase views quite a bit if we put in the title for Dr. Ignaro's discussion, something about Dr. No, the discovery that leads to Viagra.
It led to a Nobel Prize in Viagra. That's the name. Well, I'm sure you should get the cover of his book and show that.
Yeah.
People can see it there.
Rick Folia, do you see any correlation between blood type and dietary preference? I know there's been a lot of focus about eat this if you have a specific blood type. I read a couple of those books and I wasn't very impressed with them. it isn't that I don't know for sure that there's nothing there. Here's what I do know, though, that the prevalence of the standard American diet, SAD, is just so out there that on a population basis, we really need to look at some of the basics. And a lot of those basics Daniel covers in his book. Daniel, you just wrote a book on this. Any comments?
Well, it's basically we're getting back to what these evolutionary meat bodies that we have, these genetic meat bodies, are used to consuming for many, many millennia, if not millions of years. Our diet consisted of what we could catch, kill, and eat, nose to tail, something we could pick off a vine or a above ground veggie or a tree. And that was it. There was no such thing as bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, biscuits, waffles, pancakes, tortillas, waffles, not to mention the candy cake, ice cream, soda, fruit juice. None of that existed. And the kind of foods that they've been offering us in the last 100 years, especially, these genetic meat bodies that we have are there's just nowhere, we're nowhere near being able to tolerate that. We've had a much more natural, let's put it that way, more carnivorous, not plant-based, but meat-based, animal-based diet for millennia. So I don't know if you're following a vegan or vegetarian diet, you need to know that you're not getting certain nutrients that your body that you have right now have been used to getting ancestrally. So you need to provide them with supplements. I mean, it's okay if you want to follow a vegan vegetarian because of cultural reasons or religious reasons or whatever. Just make sure you supplement with the key supplements that are going to be denied you from not eating any animals.
Very good. So more comments about citrulline and nitric oxide supplements. Bobby mentions Neo 40. I'm sure you've heard of that. Dr. Brian, it's expensive. Any tested nitric oxide supplement? I think what you may be asking is it worth it? Does the evidence indicate that these expensive ones like Neo 40 are really worth it? I will tell you, I have been a skeptic on those. Daniel, you're over there wagging your finger. What does that mean?
No, listen, I checked it out, and the dosage they give you is so minuscule compared to what you can get. If you just go on Amazon and pump in, what is it, L-citrulline?
Yeah.
The one that I get is from a company called Nutricost,
Yep.
Nutricost. It's so much cheaper. It doesn't have to be expensive, and you can put your 9 grams in there. I don't remember their dosage that they put in those Neo 40, but it was minuscule compared to what I take. So I wouldn't even bother wasting your money on that. Sorry.
Same thing
Dr.
from me. So ET himself, citrulline's the best. And Bart says, hey, be careful not to take 2 different sources of nitric oxide at the same time. Meaning Viagra or Cialis along with citrulline. Gail, 716, good for you both. Thank you for all you've provided to the general public. Well, you're very welcome, Gail. Thank you for your interest. D. Dutton, thanks. Boy, am I glad I switched to a mostly whole plant food diet. Fort Worth, West Side. Let me see I'm having a technical challenge here. Too bad about blood glucose and insulin resistance. It isn't taught in high school health classes. I would agree. It's just like, this is not rocket science, people, and it's killing us. And it's disabling us. It's the #1 cause of death and disability. And yet, we don't teach it. Nobody knows about it, including the professionals that are supposed to be managing it and teaching the rest of us. Rick Folia, does stents make getting a calcium score impossible? Not completely and totally impossible, but pretty much. They really screw up the ability to get any information out. out of it. There's no question about that. Bart, the stents somehow interfere with the calcium score. Not sure how. Well, they're, with this calcium score, you're looking at what we call radio opacity. In other words, big white marks with when the X-ray goes through to make the image. That's the same thing that you're getting with a stent, you get with calcium. So you can't tell which part's calcium, which part's the stent. Tired looking for name, that super chat I mentioned ago, very inspiring guest. I would agree. And again, acknowledge you, Daniel, and thank you again for coming on board. Like I said to you before, you got a lot of guys on here that are very interested in looking like that, not just for looks, but also knowing the health that goes along with it.
That's what it's all about. It's just, that's why I do it. I'm not I'm not a model or anything like that. I just want to live a long, healthy life, and I'm not looking to be Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything like that. It's interesting. The women that I've spoken to throughout my life, when this would come up in the conversation, it seemed to me, now there's always exceptions to this, right? But it seemed to me that they were always preferred the type of body that was a cross between, let's say, a gymnast and a professional dancer. It wasn't the Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I'm sure there are women there that like that, but it seemed aesthetically, I think that's because if you look at any old photos of hunter-gatherers from the 30s, I have one in the book of these three guys from the 1939, and they were indigenous hunter-gatherer aborigines, right? And and I even say above the photo, I said, do they look like they suffered from carbohydrate overdose disorder? And I say, not with those abs. They were cut, they were muscular, because they had to strenuously work to survive, whether it's hunting or gathering. And they didn't have bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, pizza, tortillas, sodas, candy, cake, ice cream, and all the stuff that's tempting as you go through the Starbucks. You got to avoid that snack shelf there. Right? But, by the way, on that other thing about ancestral, there was a research report from, I'm reading it here, Clinical Cardiology, and it states, because they were talking about the short amount of time that we've been eating all these carbohydrates and sugars and so forth in the last 100 years or so, it says, this mismatch between our ancient physiology and the Western diet and lifestyle underlies so many so-called diseases of civilization, including coronary heart disease, obesity, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, epithelial cell cancers, autoimmune disease, and osteoporosis, which are rare or virtually absent in hunter-gatherer and other non-Westernized populations, unquote. So these bodies are just not used to, the kind of food in the standard American diet.
And it's not just Westernized, because as that started to, even Japan is starting to have a problem now. This quote Western diet is headed east and throughout the rest of the world. It's the developed world diet, and it's killing more. It's taking those diseases along with it. So Daniel, you and I talked several times about, again, stuff we would cover. And I kept assuring you, once we got the audience geared up and warmed up, we wouldn't have time for all of it. And it's the case. We've got, about 40 or 50 other questions here. I know we're not going to be able to cover them. I've got a patient coming in 2 minutes. I'm going to have to get off. So thank you so much for appearing today. And we'd love to have you back.
It was a lot of fun. And thank you to the audience for viewing.
Thank you.